Hello and welcome to Lost Love Chronicles.
My name is Bill Jackson. I am a 42-year-old manager in a construction firm in Los Angeles. I had met my wife, Ellen, 12 years ago when she was 21 and worked as a file clerk outside my office. What had caught my eye were the tight jeans she wore that hugged her shapely ass. She also had a nice set of tits. Nothing fantastic, but I had guessed they were 34Cs. She was quite attractive and gave a good overall impression. I had been divorced from my first wife for about 4 years and had no children. I always wanted to have children, so things just seemed to fall into place with Ellen working outside my office and taking care of the project files. Ellen and I began to going out to lunch, and after a couple of weeks I asked her to spend the weekend with me. The weekend was enjoyable, and the sex and companionship was great. We began to date frequently and soon became exclusive. A couple of months went by before Ellen told me she was pregnant. I asked her if she wanted an abortion or if she wanted to get married. She said she did not want an abortion. We were married the next weekend in a private ceremony. I was very happy because I knew it was time to start a family. I was 30 years old and I wanted to have kids while I was still young enough to enjoy them. I wanted to be an active part of my kid's life. I had noticed that Ellen had become very quiet and withdrawn during the pregnancy. It was not an experience she enjoyed. What I didn't realize at the time was that Ellen had married me to escape living with her mother, and that she had no real interest in having kids, having previously aborted 2 from a past boyfriend. About 3 months before our first son was to be born, Ellen quit her job to stay home as a full-time housewife and soon-to-be mom. Our second and third sons followed quickly, and within 3.5 years we had 3 healthy sons. With 3 active young sons, Ellen was extremely busy and was often exhausted by the time I came home. I did appreciate her efforts at being a mom. However, the decline in her desire to have sex left me a bit on edge. I noticed that Ellen's attitude began to change when she turned 30. The kids were now all in grade school, and I had assumed Ellen would be able to relax a bit more and pay more attention to me. Unfortunately, our sex life continued to remain at a low. I never really knew what Ellen was doing during the day with the kids in school. I looked back at what my mom used to do: cleaning the house, doing the laundry, shopping for food and the kids' clothes, taking the kids to soccer practice. I assumed Ellen's day would be pretty much the same as what I had seen my mom do. One day, Ellen approached me after dinner and told me she would like to find a part-time job. She said she was getting bored staying at home by herself during the day. I was a little concerned because I didn't see how she could make lunches, get the kids off to school, clean house, do the laundry, take the kids to soccer practice, go shopping, and still find the time for a job. I was worried that her health may suffer from plain exhaustion. Ellen spent a few weeks looking and then by word of mouth found a part-time job as a bookkeeper for a small local gym. She told me that she would be given a free membership and would only work from 8 a.m. until noon. This would allow her to get the kids off to school and come home after work to do the necessary chores before the kids got home. She told me that if there was ever an emergency at school, the school could reach her at work, and she would only be 10 minutes away. Ellen appeared to have thought this out carefully, and I could find no flaw in her logic. So, I told her, go for it. Ellen started work and seemed to get an emotional lift from having to interface with adults at work. Things seemed to settle into a well-established routine, and Ellen's demeanor substantially improved. A few months after she started work, Ellen approached me with a request to take advantage of the gym's free membership. She wanted to go to the gym early in the morning from 4:30 a.m. to 6 a.m. to exercise, then come back home to get the kids off to school and then head off to work at 8 a.m. Because of my commute, I had to leave the house at 6:30 a.m., so I really didn't see any conflict with the family's overall schedule. A few months went by, and I began to notice Ellen getting her old figure back. She had dropped 20 pounds and was now carrying 120 pounds on her 5 feet minus 4 inches frame. When I complimented her on her efforts, she surprised me by telling me she felt her boobs were too small. She told me she wanted breast enhancements to make her boobs perky again. I realized after having 3 kids, she deserved the implants, especially if it would improve our stale sex life. Ellen got her implants, and it took her a couple of weeks to fully recover. Apparently, the surgeon inserted the implants through her armpits to make them look and feel more realistic. He did a very good job, and she was ecstatic with the results. Ellen again returned to her part-time job and early morning workouts. Things got back into the groove of everyday family life. But that was soon to change dramatically. It was early Saturday morning, and I was cleaning out Ellen's car. As I took out the floor mat on the driver's side, I noticed a small cellophane bag underneath the car seat. I pulled out the small bag and noticed it was partially filled with white powder. I had no idea what was in the bag, but the possibility that the bag contained drugs crossed my mind. I began to get an uneasy feeling. Where would Ellen get drugs? Could the drugs belong to a friend? What in the hell was going on? What was Ellen doing during the day? I decided not to tell Ellen what I had found. I needed time to think things out and talk to an old friend who lived life walking on the fence. If the substance in the bag was a drug, my bud Tommy would know. That afternoon, I asked Ellen if she could take the kids to their soccer games because I needed to get an oil change for my car. I told her I would be back in a couple hours. I left the house and headed across town to Tommy's apartment. Just as I was about to knock on Tommy's door, the door opened and Tommy bent down to grab his newspaper. It had been a couple of years and Tommy was surprised to see me. I told him the kids, family life, and weekend soccer games was keeping me busy and chasing skirts with my old single buds was probably not practical. When he laughed, I told him I needed a favor. He told me, that's what friends are for. I entered his apartment and I showed him what I had found under Ellen's car seat. He opened the bag, wet his index finger, and tapped the white substance. He brought out a small amount on his fingertip, looked at it, and touched it to his tongue. Tommy casually said, "Meth." I stood there stunned. What was Ellen doing with meth? And who had given it to her? I must have looked bewildered for Tommy told me to sit down. Tommy saw the look in my face and asked me about Ellen. I told him she was working part-time as a bookkeeper at a local gym. He laughed and said, gyms were a haven for drugs, steroids, meth, and cocaine were the usual suspects, and the most trainers wind up banging their housewife clients. It is very common. But he mentioned this may just be the tip of the iceberg of Ellen's shenanigans. I started to get a sinking feeling in my stomach. I think Tommy saw the blood drain from my face. Tommy looked at me and said, "You need to hire a PI. They will be discreet and are professionals. If you follow her and find her having sex with some guy, what are you going to do? Punch the guy out and get arrested for battery, and you may even lose the fight and give him a get-out-of-jail-free card to beat the hell out of you claiming self-defense? Punch her out and get arrested for felony spousal abuse? You're the one who would go to jail, and you're the one who would suffer as Big Bubas's bitch. All you would do is leave the door wide open for Ellen to continue her affair, and she would probably have the guy move into your home while you were in jail. When you got out, you would have nothing. California is a no-fault state, so her adultery would be ignored. But it gets worse. If you could not support her and your kids because you were incarcerated, the courts would take your 401k and retirement funds to use for spousal and child support. And remember, there is nothing to stop you wife from using those funds to support her lover. You would have effectively thrown away your life up to this point. When you were finally released from prison, you would carry the stigma of being an ex-con to every potential employer you contact. Unless you can start your own business, which is highly unlikely, you will be forced to take a job, if you can even find one, at a fraction of the pay of your current position. Tommy went on, "We have been friends for a long time, so I want you to hire a PI and I want you to bring me all the information he finds. If she is taking drugs, you need to get her into a rehab facility for the sake of your children and the stability of their home. However, if she has committed adultery and you have done nothing to encourage that particular behavior, then she has lost respect for you and has disregarded the welfare of her children. If that is the case, you will never gain back her respect, and you need to take the kind of action that will allow you to walk away from this situation with your pride and your balls intact. No woman is ever sorry she cheated on her husband. She is only sorry that she got caught. A woman who is unfaithful fully intended her actions. She knew exactly what she is doing. It is a selfish act that totally disregards the feelings of her husband and family. And remember, the next time for her gets easier and easier. However, if she was drugged, then she was not cheating, but she was involuntarily raped." Tommy continued, "Women are different than men. From their late 20s to their late 30s, women's hormones are running wild. They are at the same runaway hormone level as an 18-year-old guy. Any woman who has been married for a few years and hits that cycle is looking for a new tool. Whether they successfully find it is another question. With the divorce rate in the Los Angeles basin at 65%, with 85% instigated by the wife, for first marriages and 80% for second marriages, and with an overall female infidelity rate of 50%. Equates to a lot of wives fucking on their first and second husbands with no remorse. It appears that few women learn their lesson, but most continue their infidelity in subsequent marriages. Remember, not only does it get easier and easier, but the grass is always greener on the other side of the hill until you have to mow the lawn. Well, Bill, that is why I stayed single. I just saw too much in my line of work as a PI. With the divorce laws the way they are, men, in general, are fighting an uphill battle. And remember, Bill, it is a war to get the upper hand. Men don't marry partners. They marry adversaries and spend the rest of their lives suffering in silence. I left Tommy's apartment that afternoon shaken to the core. I took the business card of the PI Tommy handed me. I would call the PI Monday. I wasn't going to be emotional and mentally abused by anyone's runaway hormones. 2 weeks later, I stared in disbelief at the PI's report. Apparently, Ellen was meeting a trainer from the gym during her early morning workout. They had a routine worked out where they met at 4:30 a.m., spent a half hour fucking in the back of her car, and then went in for a workout when the gym opened at 5 a.m. It had never occurred to me to check what time the gym opened. I felt like an idiot. I had trusted her, and she had deceived me and the kids. I was not sad nor was I heartbroken. I was experiencing ice-cold rage. The trainer turned out to be a small-time drug dealer who dealt in steroids and meth. I called Tommy and told him I would be stopping by with the PI's report. The drive through crosstown traffic was miserable. 45 minutes later, I was ringing Tommy's door. Tommy opened the door, invited me in, and motioned me to sit down. Tommy slowly digested the PI's report and gently handed it back to me. He told me to listen very carefully. First, Tommy said, you must not do anything that will make her suspicious. It is imperative that she does not suspect you know anything. He then explained the next course of action. I work early Monday around 4:15 a.m. Ellen was just getting out of the shower and went over to put on her gym shorts and top. I wondered if she was even wearing panties. Probably not. I lay in our bed pretending to be asleep. Once she went downstairs, I quietly got out of bed, slipped into my clothes, and waited until I heard the garage door open. I heard the garage door close, and I quickly went downstairs, put on my gloves, grabbed my camera with a telephoto lens, and went into the garage. I opened the truck to my car and pulled out Ellen's original plastic bag and 2 additional plastic bags of meth that Tommy had given me on my last visit. I took the bags and my camera, laid them on the passenger seat of my car, opened the garage, and headed down the road towards Ellen's gym. As I approached the gym, I killed my lights and parked about 50 yards away from the gym's parking lot. I picked up my camera, the 3 bags of plastic, and exited the car. As I approached the parking lot under the cover of the bushes, I noticed Ellen's car parked a slot away from an older Ford Bronco. I couldn't see anyone in the Bronco, but I did notice some movement in the back seat of Ellen's car. I crept up to the Bronco and slowly opened the driver's door and tossed 2 of the plastic bags into the passenger's seat. I then kept low and snuck around the front of the Bronco and tossed the last plastic bag on the ground by the back seat of Ellen's car. I looked up and I could see Ellen's head by the far window. She getting pounded doggy style by a male I had never met. I assumed it was her trainer. I crept back out of the parking lot and went around the corner. I pulled out the untraceable cell phone I had purchased with 30 minutes of time and dialed 911. I gave the operator a fake name, the address of the gym, and told her that I was witnessing a rape and child abduction in progress. I told her the male suspect may be armed. I ran across the street and hid in the bushes poised with my camera and telephoto lens. In less than 3.5 minutes, 2 squad cars pulled up without their sirens and with their headlights off. Simultaneously, they drove into the parking lot and turned on their headlights on the 2 cars. The cops opened their squad car doors and stood behind them with their guns drawn. I could hear the cops through the bullhorn telling the occupants of the car to exit the vehicle now with their hands on top of their head. An unknown male emerged first wearing only his boxer shorts. Ellen, still topless, came out next wearing her gym shorts. Both occupants were told to turn around and place their hands against the car. 2 cops, under the cover of the other 2 cops, approached Ellen and her friend, grabbed their hands one at a time, and handcuffed their hands behind their back. I saw one cop bend down and pick up a plastic bag. He then showed it to the other cop and motioned for the other 2 backup cops to come over. 2 of the cops went over to the Bronco and opened both front doors. 1 cop came back holding 2 additional plastic bags. The cops conversed for a couple of minutes, ran a check on the license plates of the 2 cars, and checked the driver licenses they had found in Ellen's car and the Bronco. Although I didn't have much light, I was snapping pictures as fast as I could. I then saw the cops take Ellen and put her in the back seat of one squad car, and her friend went into the back seat of the other squad car. Then the squad cars drove away. I headed back to my car and drove home. When I got home, the kids were still asleep. 6 o'clock came around, so I woke the kids up to get them ready for school. At 7:30 a.m., I drove the kids to school. I thought to myself that I was doing a pretty good job as Mr. Mom. I drove home and called my boss to let him know I would not be coming in that day. About 11 a.m., I got a collect call from a sobbing Ellen telling me she needed to be bailed out of jail. She and her trainer had been arrested at the gym for possession of an illegal substance. I said I would find out what her bail was and see what I could do. She was crying as she hung up. I called my attorney and told him I wanted to file for divorce that week and to request supervised visits for Ellen. I also wanted him to obtain a restraining order against Ellen to stay away from the kids and not come within 100 yards of my home. Finally, I let out a sigh of relief. I walked over to my liquor cabinet, took out my bottle of Johnny Walker Blue Label, and poured about half my glass. I went into the living room, and, as I looked at her smiling photo, I quietly said, "You fucking filthy whore, you can rot in jail. You will never come back to my home."
Dear listener, if you have reached this far, please click on the subscribe button. It will be a great help.